Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. And for all you new people out there, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We do appreciate it. So, today we're going to talk about buying a used chainsaw. This time of year, everybody's looking for chainsaws to cut down firewood and everything. And you might have a chainsaw that's been sitting in the shed forever and can't get it started, and you don't want to bother with it, so you want to get another one. Now, there's a few things we look for when we buy a chainsaw, and we're going to go down them one at a time and give you some hints to help you find one that's actually going to work for you and it's going to last a little while. So let's get started. Now, the first thing I'll look at when I'm trying to buy a saw is the general condition of the saw. Does it look like it's been dropped out of a pickup truck on the interstate or been thrown out of a tree onto the sidewalk? In the case of this one, everything looks pretty good. There aren't any cracks in the case, and nothing's obviously broken on it. So it feels pretty good. Chain brake sounds like it works. On this one, it's a little bit dusty, but remember, this is a chainsaw. A little bit of dirt, a little bit of oil, that's fine. Okay, general condition on both of these is about the same. This one may be a little bit dustier than this one is, but they both look pretty good. There's no huge oil spill around the chain oil or the fuel mix, so I'm pretty happy with both of these. Now, the second thing we'll look for, if the condition's pretty good on the saw overall, is what does the bar look like? The bar will tell you the story of this chainsaw's life. In this case, you can see the wear marks here where it's gone clear through the paint. That tells me that this saw's done a little bit of work. Now, that doesn't mean that the saw's no good. It just means it's worked a little bit in its life. This one, however, has most of its original lettering, and even though it may be scratched up here and there, it looks like the bar's got very little time on it, so this saw's probably in really good shape inside, but we'll find that out. Okay, the third thing I look for when I go through a chainsaw and I'm trying to buy it is how well do the controls work. When you have the stacked on-off switch and choke, when you pull the choke out, it should turn the switch on. If you turn the switch off, it should close the choke. However, you can put the choke in and the motor should remain on. This one works correctly. This is a slightly different style where you've got a momentary off switch and the choke is separate, but they look good. When I look at the primer bulbs, it looks like this one primes gas pretty good. This one's got a full primer bulb also. So both of these look pretty good in that respect. The controls on these are in good shape. Okay, now I felt a little bit of a kink on this one. I let this go back in. But it seems to be recoiling correctly, so that kink could have been just a little bit of dirt in here. That's pretty easy to clean out. The next step we go through when we're looking at a chainsaw and considering buying it is we look at the cylinder. And in order to do that, you do have to take the cover off and take the spark plug out. And you might think that people would have a problem with that, but I use this little camera to do it. And every single time I've ever wanted to do this, people have always been so fascinated with the camera, they can't wait for me to take their chainsaw apart. The only question they ever ask is how long it's going to take. And when I tell them it takes 2 or 3 minutes to get the cover off and get the plug out and to look at it with the camera, they want to watch. And that's all great. If they say no, walk away. That means they're probably hiding something. So let's take these apart real quick and have a look inside. So the next step we do every time is we take a camera and we use this to look inside the cylinder. And you do that by taking the cover off and taking the spark plug out. Now, this camera cost $18 on Amazon, and it's the best investment you'll ever make. And it comes in handy besides looking at cylinders. You can use it to find things behind the couch if you want. But I've used this for looking inside walls for electric wires and all sorts of things. So let's take the covers off of these real quick and see what we've got. So the next step we do every single time when we're buying a chainsaw is we take the cover off and take the spark plug out and look inside the cylinder. And we do that using this little camera that I got on Amazon. Now, I've had this camera for about a year now, and I think I paid $18 for it, and it works like a charm. If you're buying used yard equipment, $18 is a good investment when you're spending $100 on a chainsaw. So let's take the covers off and have a look inside of these. It's just that easy getting inside. So let's plug our camera in and have a quick look. As you can see, they're lit up. So the first thing you'll do is get your cylinder by pulling the cord here all the way to the bottom. There we go. And we're going to look at the exhaust side of the machine. And we're looking high. And now here, you'll note these black stripes. Now this one looks pretty shallow. And a small one here. And we've got a little bit of a problem here. Now when I look at this, it only runs about halfway up the cylinder. So it's not the end of the world. But this saw's obviously got a little bit of time on it. This is probably from overheating. If it were all the way across, it would be regular gas. And running regular gas in one of these will eat a motor up in a hurry. So I'm not super fond of this, but I'd have to hear this saw run. I wouldn't sell it, but I would consider buying it for myself. So let's put this back together and have a look at the other one. So now we're going to put our camera on our cylinder, and the first thing we will do is move the piston all the way to the bottom. Looks like this one might be pretty close already. Oh, there you go, she's all the way down. And we're looking at the exhaust port now. Now you can see on this one, these lines going this way, those are machine marks from when the cylinder was created. They're highlighted a little bit by the fact that we're going at an angle and we've got our light bulb on pretty bright. Here's our exhaust port here, and you see just the vaguest little traces of lines up. That is a beautiful thing. I would love this saw. There's just nothing wrong with that cylinder. So let's put her back together and go to the next step. So the next thing we're going to test is the clutch and the safety brake. It doesn't scare me off if the clutch or the safety brake are a problem, but if you're buying one for your own use that you don't want to work on, you definitely want to hear it run and you want to do this test before you make your decision. So let's go outside. The next test we're going to do is for the clutch. Now to test the clutch, what you do is you start the engine and see if the chain moves at all when it's idling. If the chain does not move when it's idling, and it does move when you hit the accelerator, then the clutch is probably okay. Clutches are pretty hard to mess up, so I very rarely see one with a bad clutch. After that, we're going to test the brake. And we do that by revving it up a little bit and pushing the brake forward, which should stop the blade. And the motor should not be capable of overwhelming the brake. No matter how fast it's spinning, that brake should stop the blade. So let's try that. Okay, let's pull the choke out, prime it up a little bit, turn the brake off. Okay, this one sounds okay at idle. It's still cold, but the blade is holding still. She accelerates decently, and the blade moves fast. It moves well when it accelerates. And that's the one with the bad cylinder, the cylinder that had the marks on it. She sounds really good, and this was not a setup. We took her straight out and started it, and it started on the first try. Now, when you start a chainsaw, of course, you pull the choke out, and then usually, if you hear the engine pop even a little bit, then you push the choke back in and pull it, and it'll start. This time, with the design of this, I was pretty fast, and I hit the choke before it stalled. So let's try the other one. We'll go ahead and prime her up. Undo the brake. Whoops. Hit the choke. The video gods got me on that one. I had to stop and put some gas in this when it was completely out. So let's test her out now. Okay, we primed it, full choke, and I primed it quite a few times before I started filming. Okay, the chain is very loose on this one, but she's still sitting still when she idles. And it takes off really good when you rev it up. So let's test the brake. Okay, and that works pretty good. Wow, that chain's really loose on this one, isn't it? Let's do a quick recap. We looked at the bar, and you can tell by the wear on the bar approximately how much the chainsaw has been used. I don't worry too much about how old it is. If it's 20 years old and it's only been used 10 times, that's good for me. Next thing we looked at is the general condition of the saw. And what we're looking for is just abuse. Has it ridden around in the back of a pickup truck for 20 years? And is it all just beat to death? If it is, the owner probably hadn't taken care of it and you don't want it. Next thing we looked at are all the assorted controls on it. We looked at the trigger and at the trigger lockout and all that whatnot, the choke and the start levers, and we make sure that they're all in good shape. Next thing we look at is the cylinder, and this is the most important part for me. We looked inside the cylinder and looked for wear. Now, one of them showed a fair amount of wear on it, and while it still runs good, for a homeowner, you might get 2 or 3 or maybe even 5 years out of it. You wouldn't want to use it commercially or on a daily basis because she's got some time on her. And the other one looked almost brand new. It was a really good looking cylinder on that one. Next thing we looked at is the clutch. And with the clutch, if the chain sits still at idle and then seems to move pretty well when you're accelerating, clutch is good. It's pretty hard to hurt a clutch anyway. And the last thing we looked at was the safety brake. You want to make sure the safety brake works. It may sound like something you could live without, but you wouldn't want to chain to part your hair when it's running. Well, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.